It's the end of the day. Your to-do list has 17 items on it. You crossed off 14. Emails answered. Meetings attended. Tasks completed. By any measurable standard, a good, productive day. And yet, there's a project you haven't touched in 3 weeks. A conversation you keep meaning to have. Something that actually matters to you. Not to your inbox, not to your calendar, not to someone else's urgency, but to you. And somehow, for the 14th day in a row, it didn't make it in. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, you'll manage your time better. But here's the problem. Time management isn't what's failing you. The system you're using to manage it is. And until you understand what's actually broken, tomorrow will look exactly like today. This is part 2 of the Indistractable series, based on the book by Nir Eyal. Most of us learn to manage our days the same way. Write down everything that needs to get done. Prioritize the list. Work through it. Cross things off. It feels like control. The longer the list, the more serious you are about your time. The more you cross off, the more productive you've been. But there's a quiet failure baked into this system that almost nobody talks about. A to-do list measures output. And output, the actual result of your work, is something you cannot fully control. A task takes longer than expected. A meeting runs over. Something urgent arrives from someone else and rearranges the afternoon. The list was honest when you wrote it, but by noon, it's already fiction. And when the list fails, when the items don't get crossed off, when the day collapses into other people's priorities, you don't blame the system. You blame yourself. You weren't focused enough, disciplined enough. You let yourself get distracted. But you were working against a fundamental flaw. You were measuring the one thing you can't control and ignoring the one thing you can. Nir Eyal tells a story in Indistractable about a friend of his, a freelance editor. She was meticulous. Over years of work, she tracked her word count every day to figure out exactly how fast she could edit. She used that data to build the most optimized schedule she could, fitting in as many client projects as her speed allowed, maximizing her output, making the most of every hour. It should have worked. By any logic, it should have worked. But it didn't. Projects came in heavier than expected. A client needed a quick turnaround that disrupted the whole structure. Some days her brain simply wasn't at the same speed it had been the week before. And because the schedule was built entirely around what she planned to produce, any variance collapsed the whole thing. She worked longer days than she intended. She canceled plans with family. She finished weeks exhausted, behind, and vaguely ashamed, despite being, by every external measure, a hard-working, organized professional. The problem wasn't her discipline. The problem was what she was measuring. She was measuring output. Finished words, completed projects, deliverables. Things that depended on clients, complexity, her own variable energy, and a dozen other factors outside her control. She never measured the one thing that was entirely hers: her time. This is the reframe at the center of Eyal's framework. And it sounds simple until you sit with it. Stop measuring what you produce. Start measuring what you protect. The word he uses is traction. Traction is any action that moves you toward what you've decided matters. Not what's on someone else's list. Not what's urgent by accident. What you deliberately have chosen to value. And the opposite of traction isn't laziness. The opposite of traction is distraction. Anything that pulls you away from what you intended to do. Whether it's a notification, a colleague's request, or an easy task that lets you feel busy without doing the thing that costs you something. Most people's days are full of activity. Most people's days have very little traction, and the reason is almost always the same. They planned their time around tasks, not around values. The list was full. The values were empty. But here's what most people miss when they first hear this, and it's the part that makes the whole system either click or collapse. Identifying your values sounds like a therapy exercise. Vague, abstract, something you do on a retreat and forget by Wednesday. That's not what Eyal means. He means something specific, operational. Values, in his framework, are not aspirations. They are not goals. They are not the outcomes you want to achieve. They are attributes of the person you want to be. The difference matters enormously. A goal says, I want to get fit. A value says, I am someone who moves their body. A goal says, I want to have a better relationship with my family. A value says, I am someone who is present when I'm with the people I love. Goals can be achieved and then abandoned. Values never are. You don't finish being someone who moves their body. You live it or you don't. Every day in the time you protect for it. IEL organizes this across 3 domains: yourself, your relationships, and your work. And his argument is that a well-designed schedule reflects all 3, not just work, which is the only domain most people's calendars actually contain. The schedule is not a to-do list with timestamps. It is a map of your values made visible in time. And once you see it that way, a blank calendar stops looking like freedom. It starts looking like an invitation for other people's priorities to fill the space. There's a study worth knowing here. Researchers asked participants to commit to exercising on a specific day. One group simply said they intended to exercise. The other group wrote down exactly when and where they would do it: a specific time, a specific location, a specific block. The first group followed through 34% of the time. The second group, 91%. Same intention, same motivation. The only difference was that one group scheduled the input, the time and the action, rather than hoping the output would appear. This is what IEL calls time boxing. And it is, he argues, the closest thing to a guaranteed productivity system that actually exists. Not because it's complicated, but because it shifts what you're measuring. You're no longer asking, did I finish the project? You're asking, did I show up for the time I committed to it? The output is a hope. The input is a promise. And when you honor that promise, when you sit down at the block you scheduled for the duration you committed on behalf of the value it represents, you've succeeded. Whether the work was brilliant or halting, whether the words came easily or didn't come at all, you kept the appointment with yourself. That is the metric. The book that guided this entire series, IEL's Indistractable, goes deep on exactly how to build this structure from scratch. The affiliate link is in the description. It costs you nothing extra, and it helps keep the series going. Now here's where most people stumble. Because here's what happens when someone first tries to build a values-based schedule. They open their calendar. They write down their 3 domains. They block out time for the things that matter. They feel, for the first time in a long time, like they are actually in control of their own life. And then Tuesday arrives. A meeting gets added to the block they reserved for themselves. A colleague needs something urgent. The project at work expands into the hours they were going to use for something else. And because their values-based blocks don't have the social legitimacy of a meeting invite, they collapse first. What they built wasn't fragile because the system was wrong. It was fragile because they hadn't yet understood that a time box is not just a calendar entry. It is a commitment, not to productivity, not to output, to yourself. IEL is direct about this. He says that managing your time is, at its core, a question of integrity, whether you live by the values you claim to hold. Canceling a block you reserved for your health, or your relationships, or your creative work is not a scheduling failure. It is a small breach of trust with yourself. And the accumulation of those small breaches, day after day, week after week, is why so many organized, hardworking people end the year feeling like they never got to what actually mattered. The fix is not a better list. The fix is treating your own time with the same seriousness you give a meeting with someone else. Let's make it concrete. 3 steps, not systems, not apps. Just 3 decisions. First, identify one value in each domain. Not a goal, not an outcome, a quality of person. In yourself, maybe it's someone who thinks clearly and rests deeply. In your relationships, someone who is actually present, not just physically nearby. In your work, someone who moves the important thing forward, even on days when the urgent thing is louder. Write those 3 things down. They are the skeleton of your schedule. Second, before you add a single task, a single meeting, a single obligation to your week, block time for each value. Not time you'll find, time you protect in advance before the week fills in around you, even 30 minutes per domain. The block exists before anything else does. Third, measure by whether you kept the appointment, not by what you produced inside it. You sat down for the block. You honored the commitment. That's the win. The output will come. The input is what you control. And when something breaks the structure, because something will, don't start over. Adjust the blocks and go again. Time boxing is not a system you perfect. It is a practice you return to. Here's what this video gave you. The to-do list was measuring output. The one thing you can't fully control. That's why organized people still feel behind. The system was designed to fail them. The freelance editor tracked everything except what mattered. Not how fast she worked, but whether the time she gave her work matched the life she said she wanted. And the study said it plainly. Scheduling the input, the time, the action, the block, pushes follow-through from 34% to 91%. Not because you try harder, because you decide in advance. And when you put it all together, stop measuring what you produce. Start protecting what you value. Schedule the input. Honor the appointment. Do that for 2 weeks, and I promise you, the feeling at the end of the day starts to change. Not because you crossed off more items, because the items you crossed off were yours. We're not done. This is part 2 of the Indistractable series. The next video covers what happens after you've protected your time. The external signals that will try to take it from you anyway. Notifications, inboxes, group chats, and the 4-channel redesign that makes your environment work for your focus instead of against it. If you don't want to miss it, you know what to do. Subscribe and share this with someone who may need it.